Hello, hello, and welcome to my thoughts on this Sunday. Um, One of the things I've been thinking about is how very small things can literally change your life. And of course, I have stories. Um, Very little things that can change your life. And one of the times I'm thinking of is when I was 36 and I stopped digesting food. And I became a human guinea pig at the National Institutes of Health. Um, they took me in because nobody could figure out what was wrong with me. And when I got to the hospital, it was you didn't pay because you were a guinea pig, because they were trying drugs on you that had not been fully tested. And I was there for calcium infusions because my bones were disintegrating. But I also was there because I wasn't digesting food and nobody could understand why. And when I got there, it was not a hospital visit that would be over in 2 or 3 days. It was a hospital visit that it was to be for 6 weeks. And I remember that I went there because I was desperate to find out what was wrong and see if I could get better because I did not want to lose my teaching job, which, by the way, I did. But when I got there, I didn't realize the enormity of what it was like to be the object of an experiment for 6 weeks, where they monitor your food, they wake you up at 6 or before, and you're in a hospital room. And I was alone in that hospital room. Um, and I was terrified. And what I remember is I spoke to one of the nurses, and her name was Gladys. And I said, I didn't realize that there would be absolutely nothing to do but to lie there, and you couldn't leave the room. You couldn't do anything. And I could read for just so much. I knew enough to bring books. I knew enough to bring books. But I didn't know what I was literally going to do with myself. And Gladys said to me, so what do you usually do at home? I said, well, I, let's see, that was, I have a cat, and I take care of the cat, and I paint. And she said, oh, you do? She said, what kind of painting do you do? And I said, well, I do soft pastels, chalk. I do soft pastels. And I do some acrylic. And that's what I do. And then I see people and I talk to people. And here, I don't know anyone. And it's just this silent room surrounded by other people who were dying, because we all were dying at National Institutes of Health. Um, I was supposed to die and I didn't, but all of us were. It was a death sentence. If you went there, you were pretty hopeless because you were taking drugs that hadn't been properly tested. You were one of the human trials. And she didn't say anything, and she was really lovely, and she left. And the next morning when I woke up, there was a set of Rembrandt pastels and paper for me, and so that I could do my art. And I have to say that because I had those pastels and because I had that paper, the stay that I had was it was wonderful. I enjoyed my time. Little things that can change your life. The other thing in that hospital that changed my life was I made friends with the lab technician. She was the one that analyzed all the stuff they take out of you, and they analyzed to find out why your body isn't reacting the way you want to. And the doctors were very, very negative with me. They couldn't seem to find out why I wasn't digesting food. And when they tried the calcium infusions, they definitely didn't work. I had a very violent adverse reaction to calcium. which I don't understand because I take calcium now and I'm fine. But I was really on the road to death. And I was 36 years old, and I didn't want to die. I didn't want to do that. And the lab technician, whose name was Catherine DeLay, was really intelligent, and we really hit it off. And she would take me home on weekends because they extended my stay from 6 weeks to 12. It ended up being 4 months that I was there. And she, after the first couple months, took me home on weekends. And it made all the difference because I wasn't eating institutional food. I was with her, and it was wonderful. But they pretty well told me that the prognosis was terrible, and that since they couldn't make me digest food, I probably would die. And then Catherine and I were talking about some of the talents that I have, and one of the things that I can do is knit, and I can knit. And at that time, I didn't even realize that I also eventually was creating my own clothes. I was designing my own clothes. But at that time, I just could knit. I've been knitting since I was 10, and I could knit. And she said, I have always wanted an Afghan. And I said, well, they take a long time to knit, but I'd be happy to knit it for you. And she got me the yarn to make an Afghan. And to me, because she was the one that really knew what my physical condition was, um, if she could entrust me with all that yarn to do a project that would take a minimum of a year, I knew that I would live that year. And that was a huge thing to me. But now I'll tell you the other thing that changed my life. Um, well, all of this, I've had many, but these are things that are standing out as I'm thinking about what happened during that terrible illness time. Um, when I got out of the hospital, I weighed 55 pounds, and most of it was water weight. I was emaciated. And my father had a client whose name was Martin Wiener. And Martin Wiener had taken quite a shine. His father had always loved me, but Martin Wiener was a son, and he had taken quite a shine to me. And he was a great deal older. Um, and I didn't really understand the connection because we did not have very many conversations. Um, Looking back, I think that's probably my fault because I was frightened of him and in awe of him because he was an exceptionally wealthy and important man, and I was an exceptionally unimportant woman. But when I got out of the hospital, it was the second time, so I had been in there for 4 months. They sent me home. I lasted about a month, and then I had a complete physical breakdown, and I went back for another 2 months. So it was 8 months of being almost an invalid. And when I got out, as I said, I weighed 55 pounds. Uh, and of course, none of my clothes, I was never much of a dresser, but none of my clothes fit. And my life before then had been teaching school, but never, no social life whatsoever. And when I got back from the hospital a second time, Martin Wiener found out that I had been ill and he wanted to do something for me. So he called me up and he said, how would you like to go to the opera? And when I love opera, but when I discovered it at the University of Michigan, I thought it was wonderful. And I had only at that time been to one live opera, and it was Faust. My cousin Linda took me, and we sat at the top balcony. And if any of you know Faust, as Margarita rose to heaven, I could practically touch her. We were so far. But I couldn't think of anything but a proposal of marriage that would make me happier than going to an opera. And the Toledo Opera Society had just begun, and they were putting on a performance of Madame Butterfly. And I don't know whether any of you know Madame Butterfly, but it's an exquisite opera about a sailor named Pinkerton, who decides to get himself a Japanese concubine named Butterfly. who falls in love with him. And she is 14 years old. And I have seen many, many performances of Madame Butterfly since, because I ushered at the San Francisco Opera. But on this occasion, he asked me if I would like to see Madame Butterfly. And without thinking, I said, oh, I would love that. And he said, well, I'll pick you up at 7 o'clock. And then I realized that I was going to an opera. You don't wear a pair of jeans and a short to an opera. And that was pretty much all I had. And I looked through my closet, and I still remember the dress. I had one dress that I never wore because I had no occasion to wear it. But it was made for when I weighed a normal weight. And my normal weight is about 90 to 100 pounds. And I weighed half that. And that's the dress. It was a brown dress with big squares of color on it. And I put that on, and it hung like a sack on me. But I had no shoes. I had no shoes. I had, we call them gym shoes. You call them, what do you call them? Running shoes. I had Oxfords, and I had gym shoes. That's actually what I had. They were canvas shoes, but I had no dress shoes. All I had were my ballet slippers. And if you know anything about ballet slippers, they're very thin soles. So I put on my brown dress with the pretty squares, and I put on my ballet shoes. And I remember walking, and I remember I could feel every pebble in the road. I could feel every bump in the pavement. And we went to see Madame Butterfly, and it was an outdoor theater. And the performance was probably not that professional, but I was in seventh heaven. The melodies in Madame Butterfly will transport you. And the story to somebody who was sick and expected to die, because when I got out of the hospital for several months there, I waited to die. They told me I'd never make it, and I expected to die. And for someone who thinks that their days on earth are numbered, I strongly advise listening to a Puccini opera, because the melodies will just transport you, and the story is a story of how Butterfly has Pinkerton's baby, and when Pinkerton comes back 2 or 3 years later, he comes back with his fiancée, whose name is Kate, and they come to visit Butterfly, and when they realize she's had his baby, they want to take the baby. And Butterfly tells them they can have the baby, and she kills herself. And that story to me, when I too was on the brink of death, was absolutely mesmerizing. And there I sat with Martin Weiner, a man a good 20 years older than I, a tiny skeleton in a brown dress and ballet shoes, and I just didn't want to leave that stadium. I just didn't want to leave it. And I waited for the encores, and they clapped, and all the encores and all the people came out and took bottles. And I was shocked when I saw that all the rest of the people left, and I thought, how could they leave that music? I can't leave it. And then when the place was dark and the stage was empty, Martin Weiner brought me home, and I said, thank you very much, and I went back in my house. And it was, of all the evenings that I can remember, and that includes 2 wedding nights, of all the that I can remember, that was the most beautiful, beautiful evening I've ever had. And what a small thing for that man to do, to take a ticket that he had gotten as a complimentary ticket because he was a prominent member of the Toledo business community, and take a little sick girl, because that's what I was, to an opera. So, I am going to say to you, if you know someone who's been sick or who's been tired or who's been sad or depressed, bite the bullet. Buy them an opera ticket. It'll be the most beautiful gift you can possibly give to a human being. And thank you so much for joining me for my thought on this Sunday.